This is the far more important point that I want to make, and this is to do with this 7-minute pause. So, what is a 7-minute pause? Well, it is to do with the Apple Health data. So, the Apple Health data shows a period of time after the abduction where the girls are walking, and it seems at a fairly rapid pace for about 500 steps, about 500 meters. And then there's a pause for 7 minutes of no movement before it starts up again. There's 2 floors climbed and another 60 steps. Now, the way the state have explained this is that Rick Allen lures them down into the woods, down the hill, and aims to assault the girls. And while he's undressing them or doing whatever he intended to do, the white van drives past, he gets spooked, and he makes them, dash across the creek and then to the crime scene. Now, the reason that doesn't hold, there's lots of reasons we don't believe that, because when the van actually passes, is a very contentious issue. But even if we take the fact that the van does pass at that time, that 7-minute period just doesn't seem to align with the girls standing on dry land, going through whatever horrible stuff potentially could have been happening. Because what we see there is a steep battery drop. We see random screen activity on and off. And then straight after that 7-minute pause, we see elevation data, and 7 minutes of only 66, I believe it is, steps. When you plot that all out, it looks unusual and it doesn't match the state's timeline. Let me just read through this slide so that we capture everything in full. The data from Libby's phone offers crucial clues about the 7-minute pause, and it doesn't point to Richard Allen stopping to assault the girls, being startled by a white van, and then crossing the creek. The steep battery drop, the random screen activity, and the irregular movement and elevation data straight after all align with another plausible scenario. The girls were likely moving through the creek during that 7 minutes rather than standing still. And this interpretation fits both the terrain and the digital evidence while directly contradicting the state's timeline. And the narrative reinforced by Rick's false confessions while in a psychotic decompensation. And this is the data set that we're looking at, and this was sourced from Yellow Jacket on Twitter. I believe it's on the All Eyes website as well. And I plotted this roughly, the approximate steps by the time. And you can see there's a fair amount of steps straight after the video, and then there's a complete drop to nothing for this 7 minutes. And then there's this tiny bit of activity here over, again, an extended period of time. So it looks kind of unusual, looks like ambling almost. But then there's these 2 flights of steps that apparently are climbed. Now, obviously, that's not really steps, but it's an elevation. And so this period in here is unusual. When we see that same period is when this battery drops catastrophically. It goes from, I think, about 24% here right down to about 10% in this window of 7 minutes or so. It's a massive drop. And I suggest that one of the reasons that could happen is to do with this, temperature and or water. And when we put it all together, that's because I believe this is the timeline. I believe the girls get abducted. They get led down the hill to the creek's edge. Maybe there's a slight pause here where maybe they don't want to cross the creek. Maybe there's, I don't know, hesitation. And then they cross the creek. It doesn't register as movement because remember, the way that Apple Health registers movements is the sort of movement of the arms kind of in sort of a synchronized fashion. And that wouldn't necessarily happen as you're wading through that fairly deep water and maybe holding the phone up high and trying to keep it away, or holding it close to her chest, or whatever she might have been doing to keep that phone safe. And then it aligns with climbing up the creek bed, because Apple Health doesn't measure going down, but it measures going back up. So coming back up the creek bed, and we know that the crime scene is in its sort of bowl, I believe, is how it's been described. So kind of going up and then down into it, and then activity stopping. So one of the things that my research has shown me is that one of the reasons for such a catastrophic sudden drop in battery that hasn't been seen, when you look at the other data, that battery doesn't seem to drop that quickly at any other point. It's not to do with activity. The phone is not unlocked. The phone is not doing anything in that time frame. One of the most plausible explanations then is to do with environmental factors, perhaps a very sharp drop in temperature, perhaps water interference, but I don't know so much about that because I know that there wasn't necessarily indications of water damage to the phone, but absolutely that could impact the change in voltage and therefore the change in the battery. It's the best explanation I can think of.